The courtroom was packed. The hum of whispered conversations filled the air as everyone waited for the hearing to begin. Journalists from around the world lined the back, their cameras trained on the empty seats where Elon Musk would soon be sitting. The excitement was palpable. This wasn't just any case, it was one of the most talked about legal battles of the decade. Musk, the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, had become a lightning rod for controversy, and today, he was facing the judgment of the court. Judge Daniels, a seasoned jurist with a reputation for no-nonsense rulings, entered the room. With a quick nod to the room, he took his seat at the bench. The buzz quieted, and everyone turned their attention to him. The weight of the moment hung in the air as the judge called the case to order. Case of the state versus Elon Musk, the bailiff announced. The courtroom held its breath, waiting for Musk to enter. It felt as if the very air itself was thick with anticipation. Elon Musk walked in, dressed in his trademark dark suit, his usual calm expression on his face, yet there was something different about the way he moved today. His footsteps were steady but deliberate, a man who had faced countless battles before and was about to face another one. The room was divided, some watched with admiration, others with skepticism. The media had made sure to paint him as the villain, with headlines that read, "The billionaire who thinks he's above the law." Musk made his way to the defendant's table, where his legal team was already seated. They exchanged quick, meaningful glances. Musk took his seat, his posture straight, his eyes focused ahead. The judge's gavel slammed down. "Mr. Musk," Judge Daniels began, his voice sharp, "I have to admit, I find it curious that you, a man who has repeatedly claimed to be above the law, have shown up today at all." The comment stung. Musk's face remained impassive, but his jaw tightened slightly. The courtroom could feel the tension in the air, but Musk didn't flinch. Instead, he nodded in acknowledgement, almost as if preparing for the inevitable storm that was about to come. "Your lawyer here will have their work cut out for them, Mr. Musk," Judge Daniels continued, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "I'm sure it's no surprise to you, but not everyone believes that you can simply buy your way out of everything." The judge's words echoed throughout the room. The media, sensing the first crack in Musk's usually impenetrable armor, whipped their cameras into action. The reporters exchanged excited whispers. This was going to be the drama of the century. Musk's legal team, led by his top attorney, and Whitaker, glanced nervously at each other. They knew that today wouldn't be easy. Musk was no stranger to courtroom battles, but this one felt different. The stakes were higher than ever, with public opinion shaping the case as much as the law itself. "You'll find," Musk said in a low, controlled voice, "that I don't need to buy my way out of anything. I plan to prove myself on the merits of the case." The judge's expression soured. "We'll see, Mr. Musk. We'll see." Musk's statement was a subtle warning. His presence in this courtroom wasn't just about winning a legal battle, it was about showing the world that he wasn't afraid to stand up to anyone, no matter how powerful or influential they were. As the proceedings began, the case was laid out. Musk was being sued for a series of alleged breaches involving his companies, Tesla and SpaceX. Critics had accused him of overpromising on product launches, manipulating stock prices, and undercutting employee wages to maximize profits. To many, Musk had become a figure who operated on the edge of legality, his audacious ventures leaving a trail of controversy in their wake. And today, Musk was going to face the music. But as the opposing attorney began to present their opening statement, Musk remained unusually calm. His eyes scanned the courtroom, taking in every detail. He wasn't just here to defend himself against a lawsuit, he was here to win the public's trust again. The attorney for the prosecution, Richard Anderson, was a seasoned litigator with a reputation for tearing down the most formidable opponents. He stepped up to the podium, his voice dripping with confidence. "Ladies and gentlemen," Anderson began, "today we're here because of one man's reckless disregard for the rules that govern us all. Elon Musk is a man who thinks the world operates on his terms, and he's been allowed to do so for far too long. He has built an empire by bending the law, lying to his investors, and manipulating the public's trust. His arrogance knows no bounds, and today, we will show you just how far he's gone in his pursuit of power and money. The courtroom shifted uncomfortably. The public had heard these accusations before. They had seen the headlines, read the gossip, and followed the social media battles. The prosecution had a compelling narrative, and Anderson's delivery was nothing short of theatrical. Musk didn't flinch. His legal team listened carefully, their expressions unreadable. But Elon himself remained cool, his hands folded neatly in front of him. When Anderson finished his statement, the room fell into a heavy silence. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Judge Daniels turned his gaze to Musk, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Mr. Musk, it seems that your name has become synonymous with controversy. How do you respond to the charges presented against you today?" The room was electric. The media cameras zoomed in on Musk. Everyone was waiting for him to crack, to let the pressure get to him. Instead, Musk leaned forward, his gaze steady, his voice calm but full of quiet intensity. "I've built my companies not just on innovation, but on a belief in the future. A belief that we can push the boundaries of what's possible, and in doing so, create a better world. I may not have followed the conventional path, but I've never promised anyone that I would. I've only promised to do the impossible. If that's the basis of the charges against me, then I'll face them head-on. But I will not allow anyone to paint me as a villain simply for believing in what no one else dared to." The room went silent. Even the judge seemed momentarily stunned. Musk had just turned the entire narrative on its head. Judge Daniels cleared his throat, his expression unreadable. "Well, Mr. Musk, you've certainly made your point. But let's see if your actions can back up your words." As the judge moved to proceed with the case, the tension in the courtroom was palpable. The battle had just begun, and it was clear that Elon Musk wasn't going to back down. He would face every challenge head-on, not just for his businesses, but for his legacy as well. And so, the stage was set. Would Musk's genius be enough to overcome the odds, or was this the beginning of the end for the man who had built an empire from nothing? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain, this would be a courtroom battle like no other. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon Musk had always been a man who defied expectations. From his early years in South Africa to his meteoric rise in Silicon Valley, his story was one of relentless pursuit, overcoming incredible odds. But his path had never been easy. The road to success was littered with failures, doubts, and moments when it seemed like everything would fall apart. Yet, Musk never backed down. He had a fire inside him that few could understand, and it all began long before he became the billionaire entrepreneur we know today. Born on June 28, 1971, in Pretoria, South Africa, Elon Musk was the son of a Canadian mother and a South African father. His childhood was far from ideal. His parents' divorce when he was just 10 years old left him emotionally scarred, and his relationship with his father, Errol Musk, was strained. Errol was a brilliant but distant engineer, often critical and cold toward his son. Elon's mother, May, was a model and dietitian who was more supportive but also had her own set of challenges. Growing up, Elon often felt isolated and out of place. He was a bookish, introverted child with a voracious appetite for learning. He spent countless hours immersed in books, reading everything from science fiction to physics. By the time he was a teenager, his obsession with technology and innovation had already begun to shape his future. At the age of 12, he built and sold a computer game called Blaster, a simple space-themed game, for around $500. It was a small achievement, but it sparked a fire that would grow into something much bigger. Musk's adolescence was marked by both brilliance and turmoil. He was relentlessly bullied at school. His peers mocked him for his awkwardness, his interest in computers, and his strange way of thinking. The bullying was so intense that, at one point, Elon was hospitalized after a group of boys threw him down a flight of stairs, leaving him with a concussion. It was a formative experience, one that would shape his view of the world and fuel his determination to prove himself. When he was 17, Elon made the bold decision to leave South Africa and move to Canada, partly to escape his father's influence and partly to pursue greater opportunities. He enrolled at Queen's University in Ontario, where he spent 2 years before transferring to the University of Pennsylvania in the United States. At Penn, Musk studied both economics and physics, two subjects that seemed to capture his dual interests in business and technology. Musk's time at Penn was a critical period in his life. He had the vision and the drive, but he lacked the resources to make his dreams a reality. In 1995, after graduating, he moved to California to pursue a PhD at Stanford University. However, just 2 days into the program, he dropped out. The internet boom was in full swing, and Musk knew that this was his chance. He wasn't interested in academic theories, he was interested in building something groundbreaking. It wasn't long before he started his first company, Zip2, an online city guide that helped newspapers create an online presence. Musk poured everything he had into the project, working tirelessly for months on end. The company struggled at first, but in 1999, Compaq acquired Zip2 for nearly $300 million. Musk walked away with $22 million. It was a moment of triumph, but it was also just the beginning. Musk didn't rest on his laurels. He used the money from the sale of Zip2 to start his next venture, X.com, an online payment company. X.com eventually became PayPal after a merger with Confinity, and within just a few years, it became the dominant online payment platform. In 2002, PayPal was sold to eBay for $1.5 billion, and Musk walked away with $165 million. It was another massive success, but Musk was already thinking bigger. While many people would have been content to rest on their newfound wealth, Musk had bigger plans. He set his sights on the future. He wanted to change the world, to tackle the most pressing issues of his time: renewable energy, space exploration, and artificial intelligence. So, with his fortune from PayPal, he began investing in and founding companies that would become household names: Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and The Boring Company. The road to building these companies was anything but easy. Tesla, in particular, faced massive skepticism. Many experts believed electric cars would never take off. They called Musk's vision impractical and even laughed at him. But he refused to give up. Despite near bankruptcy in the early years, Musk kept pushing forward, convinced that electric vehicles were the key to a sustainable future. And against all odds, Tesla became a global powerhouse, revolutionizing the automotive industry. SpaceX, too, had its challenges. In its early days, the company failed multiple times, with rocket launches exploding in midair. Musk poured his own money into SpaceX, betting everything on his belief that humanity could become a multiplanetary species. And in 2008, after a series of setbacks, SpaceX succeeded with its first successful launch, forever changing the landscape of space exploration. Musk's relentless drive to innovate and change the world made him a polarizing figure. He became known for his ambitious goals: colonizing Mars, creating a sustainable future with renewable energy, and even developing a brain-machine interface. But his unyielding determination also earned him a reputation as a visionary genius, someone who was willing to risk everything for his ideas. However, Musk's journey wasn't without controversy. His leadership style was often described as harsh, and he was known for being outspoken and unapologetic on social media. He clashed with investors, employees, and the media. Yet, despite all the setbacks and criticism, Musk continued to push the boundaries of what was possible. But there was one thing that always haunted him: his public image. Musk had been vilified by critics who saw him as arrogant and reckless. He had been ridiculed by the media, scrutinized for every decision, and accused of being too focused on his personal ambitions. It was in these moments, when he felt the weight of the world on his shoulders, that he truly understood the depth of the battle he was fighting. This courtroom battle was not just another legal issue for Musk, it was a moment of reckoning. It was a chance to show the world who he really was, beyond the headlines and the controversies. And as he sat in that courtroom, waiting for the next round of accusations to be thrown his way, he couldn't help but reflect on everything that had brought him here. His journey had been long and filled with obstacles, but it had also made him stronger, more determined, and more focused than ever before. As the case continued to unfold, Elon Musk knew that the world was watching. And no matter what happened next, he was ready to face it head-on, just as he always had. The courtroom was becoming a battleground, but it wasn't just a war between two legal teams, it was a war of narratives, and Elon Musk's character was on trial. Judge Daniels, who had started off with a biting sarcasm, now seemed to sit back and observe more intently. The air in the room had thickened with tension, and everyone could feel it. This case was more than just a legal dispute. It was a cultural clash, a battle for the public's perception of the world's most famous entrepreneur. The prosecution had already painted Musk as a man above the law, someone who used his wealth and influence to manipulate both people and systems. Richard Anderson, the lead prosecutor, had gone in hard on the character assassination, listing a litany of supposed ethical failures and highlighting the numerous controversies Musk had been involved in. The audience could almost hear the collective murmur of the room as each accusation was thrown like a dagger. Elon Musk, Anderson declared, pacing in front of the jury, is a man who has repeatedly used his wealth and his position to bend the rules, all while playing the part of a misunderstood genius. His companies thrive on the edge of the law, and they perpetuate a culture where anything goes. Musk thinks that the rules don't apply to him. But today, he will learn that the law is not something he can simply buy his way out of. The word stung. Musk sat motionless at the defendant's table, his face impassive, but in his mind, the images of all the battles he had fought flashed before his eyes, each company he'd built from scratch, each failure he had overcome, each moment when the odds had seemed insurmountable. He had come a long way from the teenager in South Africa dreaming of building something world-changing. And yet here he was again, fighting for his name, for his legacy. But Musk was no stranger to conflict. Throughout his career, he had faced relentless criticism from the media, from investors, and from those who doubted his ability to change the world. And yet, with each hurdle, he had emerged stronger. It was that very resilience that had made him the man he was today. He had faced the fires of failure and walked through them unscathed. Musk's legal team, led by the Sharp and Whitaker, knew that they had to take control of the narrative, fast. And leaned forward, glancing at her client before turning her focus back to the court. "Your Honor," she began, her voice steady but filled with authority, "the accusations laid before you by Mr. Anderson are not only misleading, but they're a gross misrepresentation of who Elon Musk truly is. Yes, Mr. Musk is a visionary. Yes, his companies have revolutionized entire industries. But let us not confuse his innovative spirit with the idea that he is above the law. Far from it. Mr. Musk has always acted with a deep sense of responsibility to the companies he built, and to the world." She paused, allowing her words to settle in the air before continuing. "It's easy to point fingers when you don't understand the stakes, when you don't see the bigger picture. Yes, there have been mistakes, but there have also been groundbreaking successes, successes that have changed the course of history. If Mr. Musk had listened to the naysayers who told him to back down, where would we be today? The world needs people like Elon Musk, people who refuse to be held back by the constraints of the status quo. People who risk everything for a better future." Her words landed with precision, but they were also a challenge. She wasn't simply defending Musk, she was defending the entire idea that innovation sometimes requires stepping into the unknown. It was a message that resonated with the jury, many of whom had followed Musk's career and admired his accomplishments. As Whitaker finished her statement, the room was quiet for a moment. Judge Daniels shifted in his seat, his face unreadable. The prosecutor, Anderson, sat with his arms crossed, clearly annoyed at the defiant tone of Whitaker's argument. But there was a deeper current running through the room, something more than just legal tactics. This wasn't just about the law, this was about the future, about progress, and about the people who dared to push the boundaries of what was possible. The prosecution was not done, though. Anderson rose from his seat, his eyes narrowing as he turned to face the jury. Mr. Musk's so-called vision may sound noble, but let's not forget the consequences of his actions. He has built his empire on the backs of investors and employees alike, often pushing them to the brink, all for the sake of his own dreams, Anderson said, his voice sharp. Let us not forget the lives impacted by his decisions. There are people who lost their savings in Tesla, employees who were pressured to work long hours with little regard for their well-being. And for what? So that Mr. Musk can continue to fuel his grand fantasies. He glanced briefly at Musk, who remained unmoved by the attack. And now we're here, facing a man who thinks he's above it all. Well, today, we will show that even the mighty can fall, Anderson finished, his voice cutting through the room like a knife. There was no denying that Anderson had made a compelling case. The accusations were serious, and the public had been primed to see Musk as a larger-than-life figure whose ambition had led him to make questionable decisions. The stakes were high, and the pressure was mounting. But Musk didn't seem rattled. He had always been someone who thrived under pressure. In fact, it was in the most difficult of situations that his true brilliance often shone. As the prosecution sat down, Musk's eyes moved around the courtroom. The media's cameras were trained on him, capturing every flicker of emotion on his face, every subtle shift in his posture. This was the moment where he needed to take control, not just of the case, but of the narrative. He had fought against the odds before, he would do it again. Whitaker leaned in and whispered something to Musk, but he didn't need to hear it. He had already made up his mind. The best way to fight back was not to deny the accusations but to show the world that there was more to the story, much more. The room fell silent as Musk stood up, his gaze unwavering. Your Honor, he began, his voice calm but firm, I've been accused of many things in my life. But there's one thing I know for sure, I've never taken this journey alone. I've had incredible teams by my side, people who have worked tirelessly to make these companies a reality. And while there have been mistakes, those mistakes are part of the process. The process of building something truly transformative. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. But let's be clear, Musk continued, there is no progress without risk. No innovation without failure. And no great achievement without sacrifice. I am not above the law, but I am someone who is willing to take risks to push humanity forward. The room shifted. For the first time, there was a shift in the air, a sense that perhaps Musk wasn't the villain he had been made out to be. But this was just the beginning. The battle had only just started, and the court was about to hear Musk's side of the story. The narrative was about to change. The day had come. Musk could feel the weight of it pressing on him. The hours in court had been long and grueling, each moment an endurance test that seemed to stretch on endlessly. And yet, through all of it, Elon had remained calm, his face a mask of determination. He had come to this point in his life knowing that this battle, more than any of his previous ventures, was about more than just him. It was about his legacy, about proving that innovation and vision were worth defending, no matter the cost. The morning light streamed through the windows of the courtroom, casting long shadows across the polished floors. Outside, the world continued to turn, but here, within these walls, everything was on hold. All eyes were on Elon Musk as he prepared to step into the next phase of the trial. His defense had made its mark, but now, it was time to shift gears. Musk knew that the true test would come when he had to speak directly to the jury, when he would face the public head-on, and when his words would determine the outcome. Judge Daniels called the court to order, and the room fell into a hushed silence. Musk stood up, straightening his back as he approached the stand, his legal team flanking him on either side. His mind was focused. He had rehearsed for this moment, but now, as he stood on the precipice of one of the most important speeches of his life, the reality of the situation hit him like a wave. This wasn't just a courtroom drama, it was an opportunity to redefine everything the public thought they knew about him. The image of the eccentric billionaire, the wild-eyed dreamer who was often the subject of ridicule, needed to be replaced with something more human, more relatable. Musk had always been misunderstood, but now, more than ever, he needed the world to see who he really was. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Musk began, his voice steady, though the slightest edge of tension was audible, "you've heard the accusations. You've heard how I've been portrayed as someone who plays fast and loose with the rules, as though the success of my companies comes at the expense of others. But that is not the truth of who I am, nor the truth of the companies I've built." He paused for a moment, his eyes sweeping the room, locking with those of the jury. His gaze was intense but controlled, like a man who knew exactly what he wanted to say and was determined to get it across. "I didn't come here to play by the same rules that everyone else plays by. I came here to change the world," he continued, his voice rising with a passion that seemed to fill the room. "I didn't come here to be another billionaire chasing profit for the sake of it. I came here to push the boundaries of what's possible, to take risks that no one else is willing to take. And yes, along the way, I've made mistakes. I've stumbled. But who hasn't? The difference is that I've kept going. I've kept trying. Because that's the only way anything truly meaningful gets done." There was a tension in the room now, a palpable shift. The audience was listening. Even the defense team, typically composed, seemed to lean in as Musk continued. "You see, everything I've built, Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, even the Boring Company, it's all been about something bigger than profit. It's about ensuring humanity's future. It's about creating sustainable energy, exploring the stars, and making life better for everyone. And the people who work with me, the people who make this vision a reality, they know that. They understand the stakes. They know that we're not just building products, we're building a future." Musk's words hung in the air, his voice now quieter, but still heavy with the weight of truth. "But let me be clear," he said, his eyes narrowing, "I am not perfect. No one is. I've made mistakes, and I've faced consequences for them. But to hold me up as some sort of villain is not only unfair, it's a disservice to the very values we claim to hold dear. We are in a time of unprecedented challenges. If we don't take risks, if we don't push the boundaries of what's possible, then what are we doing here? We're simply letting the world pass us by." The silence that followed was thick, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was as though the room was collectively absorbing the weight of what Musk had just said. There was no denying the power of his conviction, and the truth in his words seemed to resonate deeply. As Musk continued, his tone became more reflective, more personal. "I've lost a lot along the way. I've sacrificed time with my family, time with my children. I've been through the depths of financial ruin. I've been told that I was crazy, that my dreams were impossible. But I kept going. I kept pushing because I believe in something greater than myself. I believe in the future." He looked at the jury now, locking eyes with each of them. "And that is why I stand here today. Not because I want to be remembered as some tech billionaire who got rich and left it all behind. I want to be remembered for changing the world. For proving that anyone, no matter where they come from, can build something that impacts the lives of millions. And I want you to understand that everything I've done, every risk I've taken, has been with the intention of leaving the world a better place than I found it." There was a pause, as if Musk was letting his words sink in. The prosecution, who had been poised for their next strike, sat in stunned silence. Even Judge Daniels, who had been so critical in the past, showed no sign of interruption. It was as though the entire room was waiting for something, some final word, some conclusion that would bring clarity to the tension that had been building for days. And then, Elon Musk delivered it. "I ask you to consider the bigger picture. To see beyond the headlines, beyond the noise. This case is not just about me. It's about all of us. It's about the future. And it's about what kind of world we want to leave behind. With that, Musk took his seat again, his words hanging in the air, the impact undeniable. His legal team exchanged quiet nods of approval, their confidence growing. And Whitaker allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. This was the turning point. The room buzzed with a new energy. The jury, the media, and even the spectators were suddenly aware of something they hadn't quite seen before. This wasn't just a courtroom battle, it was a battle for the future, for progress, for the very essence of innovation. And Elon Musk had just fired the opening salvo in a war that would change everything. The air in the courtroom had shifted dramatically after Musk's impassioned speech. The jury, once distant and unmoved, now seemed to hang on every word that came from him. The tension was thick, palpable, every eye in the room was on Musk as though they were witnessing not just a trial, but the unraveling of the very fabric of the public's perception of him. Elon leaned back in his chair, his hands clasped in his lap, his face composed, but beneath that stillness, there was a storm of emotion raging. He had made his case. The words had been his armor, and yet, he knew the fight was far from over. The prosecution would undoubtedly fire back with all the power they had, but Musk had done what he came to do, he had shown the world who he truly was. Then, as if fate were reminding him that this battle was as much about emotions as it was about logic, the prosecution rose. Richard Anderson, who had been waiting for this moment, stood up with the same air of confidence that had marked his every move in the courtroom so far. He addressed the jury, his voice cold, cutting through the room like a blade. Ladies and gentlemen, the defendant has done a marvelous job of portraying himself as a misunderstood genius. But let us not forget the facts. We cannot ignore the truth of his actions, no matter how he tries to disguise them with eloquent speeches and grand ideals. Anderson began to pace again, clearly ready to hit hard. Yes, Mr. Musk may have built impressive companies. Yes, he has revolutionized technology. But at what cost? Behind the so-called visionary facade lies a man who has repeatedly made decisions without regard for the well-being of the people around him. There it was again, the same accusations Musk had faced time and time again throughout his career, ruthless, careless, self-centered. But this time, it hit differently. The words seemed to pierce deeper, more personal. And let's not forget, Anderson continued, the stories we've heard from former employees, stories of overwork, of a toxic environment where the pursuit of innovation trampled over the lives of the people who worked for him. It's easy to overlook the damage when you're at the top, when you're insulated by money and power. But the reality is far darker. Musk's so-called vision is a mask for his inability to care for those around him. Musk's eyes narrowed, but he did not interrupt. Instead, he leaned forward, ready to face whatever was coming next. Anderson's words stung, but they also fueled something within him, a fire that Musk knew he needed to control. If he lost his composure now, the trial could turn against him in an instant. Anderson paused, allowing his words to settle in the air. The jury's faces were impassive, but Musk could feel their eyes on him. He had to prove them wrong. They had to see that his intentions had always been pure, even if the execution hadn't always been flawless. The prosecutor continued, his voice now dripping with mockery. Mr. Musk would like you to believe that he's an innovator, a man of the future. But in reality, he's a man who thinks he can play God. A man who takes risks with other people's lives, all for the sake of his own ambition. He has sacrificed more than just his employees' time, he has sacrificed their livelihoods, their health, and in some cases, their very safety. The words echoed through the room, and for the first time in the trial, Musk felt a pang of doubt. Could the public really see him this way? Was this how they truly perceived him? He had faced criticism before, but this felt different. Anderson's words were sharp, calculated, and dangerous. For a moment, Musk's mind flashed back to the early days of Tesla and SpaceX, the long nights in the factories, the relentless push to achieve the impossible. He remembered the faces of the employees who had believed in him, who had worked side by side with him. He thought about the investors who had taken risks alongside him, trusting him when no one else would. And yet, he had also seen the ones who had left, those who felt burned by the journey, who hadn't understood why he pushed so hard. The weight of it all came crashing down on him. The costs of his success were immeasurable, and for a fleeting moment, he wondered if it had all been worth it. But then he remembered why he started. He remembered the mission. And that fire, the same fire that had kept him going through all the years of hardship, through every challenge, every setback, ignited once again. Musk stood up, his posture straight, his face resolute. His voice cut through the silence of the room. "Your Honor, members of the jury," he began, his tone measured but firm, "what you're hearing is a narrative, a story built on selective facts and half-truths. Yes, I've made mistakes. I've been bold, I've been reckless at times, but I've never wavered in my commitment to making a better world." He turned to face the jury directly, his eyes now burning with conviction. "And while some may argue that the cost of progress is too high, I ask you this, how else would we have gotten to this point? How else would we have made the breakthroughs that have saved lives and moved us closer to a sustainable future? If we shy away from risk, if we let fear stop us, we will never move forward." Musk paused, his breath steady. "I've never claimed to be perfect, but I stand by every decision I've made, every step I've taken. I did not do this alone. My companies, my team, they are the reason we're here. We have worked together, sacrificed together, to build something that will last long after we're gone." His voice softened slightly. "The future isn't something we wait for, it's something we create. And I intend to continue creating it, no matter what it takes." The room was silent once again. There was no mockery in Musk's words now, no arrogance, no defensiveness. Just raw honesty. For the first time, the jury could see the man behind the headlines, the human being who had fought not just for success, but for something far more important. Judge Daniels cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "Thank you, Mr. Musk," he said, his voice more subdued than usual. "The court will take a brief recess." As the judge adjourned the court, Musk remained seated, his mind racing. He had made his case, but now the real battle would begin. The emotional intensity of the moment had shifted something within him. He had exposed himself, not just to the jury, but to the world. His vulnerabilities, his flaws, and his ambitions were laid bare. This trial had become more than just a legal fight. It was now a fight for his soul, for the very essence of who he was and what he stood for. And as the courtroom emptied for the recess, Elon Musk knew one thing for sure: the stakes had just been raised higher than ever before. The courtroom buzzed as the recess was called. Conversations erupted all around him, but Elon Musk remained seated, his gaze focused on the table in front of him. He knew the jury had been listening, he could feel their eyes on him during his impassioned speech. They had heard him, truly heard him, and for the first time since this trial began, he felt a sense of peace, though it was fleeting. He was no stranger to pressure, to the weight of the world on his shoulders. For years, Musk had been the face of Tesla, SpaceX, and the world's most ambitious technological dreams. He was used to being in the spotlight, used to being called a visionary, or sometimes a madman. He had learned to block out the noise, to tune out the haters and the doubters. But this was different. The stakes were higher than they had ever been. It wasn't just about defending his companies anymore, it was about defending everything he had ever stood for. As the recess wore on, Musk was left alone in the quiet. His legal team had stepped away to confer, no doubt working on their next strategy, while he sat lost in thought. The feelings of doubt that had crept into his mind during Anderson's scathing cross-examination had not completely disappeared. It was hard to avoid the truth in what Anderson had said, even if it was colored by distortion. Musk had sacrificed much to get here. He had lost personal relationships, he had hurt people, and at times, the cost of progress had seemed far too high. But was that really a bad thing? He thought of the moments when he had held his children's hands and looked at them with hope, wondering what kind of world they would inherit. He thought of the people who depended on his companies for their livelihood, of the engineers who had worked tirelessly alongside him, pushing the limits of what was possible. These people were not just numbers on a balance sheet. They were part of the mission. Musk felt the weight of his choices, heavy, but not crushing. The sacrifices, the missteps, and the wins, they had all led him to this point. And in this moment, as he sat in the silence of the courtroom, he realized something profound. His journey had been one of discovery, not just of new technologies, but of himself. He had pushed the boundaries of human potential in ways few could imagine, but it had come with a personal cost. That didn't make him a villain. It made him human. The sound of footsteps approached, pulling him from his reverie. And Whitaker, his lead counsel, returned to the table, followed by the rest of the legal team. Their expressions were serious, but not without a flicker of optimism. "Everyone's been talking about what you said out there," and said, her voice low, "and I think you've done exactly what we needed you to do. The jury is listening, Elon. They can see the man behind the legend." Musk nodded but didn't speak. He wasn't sure he was ready to hear praise, not yet. Not until it was all over. And continued, sensing his hesitation. "I know it's hard, but I want you to understand, you've just redefined this trial. Before, it was just about the accusations, about the money, the corporate decisions, the headlines. But what you did today, that's the turning point. You gave them the truth." For the first time in a while, Musk allowed himself to believe in what she was saying. The truth. It was so simple, yet so complicated. Musk's entire life had been driven by a desire to do more, to build more, to achieve more, to go further. And in doing so, he had sometimes lost sight of what mattered most. But this trial was forcing him to confront that reality. To confront his own humanity. "We've got this," and said, breaking through his thoughts again. "Let's just keep our focus. The jury's seen who you really are now. They know you didn't do this just for yourself. You've been trying to change the world." For a brief moment, Musk allowed himself to smile. It was small, fleeting, but it was genuine. It felt like a weight lifting from his chest. The trial wasn't over, but perhaps, just perhaps, he had already won something far more important than a courtroom victory. The next few days blurred into a whirlwind. The prosecution mounted their final attacks, each day bringing a new set of accusations. The defense countered with precision, tearing down the arguments one by one. But throughout it all, Musk remained unfazed. He had been through worse, much worse. He had faced financial ruin, public ridicule, and even the specter of failure in his most ambitious ventures. This trial, though grueling, seemed like a storm he could weather. It was the final day in court. The jury had deliberated for hours, and everyone in the room could sense that the end was near. Musk sat in the defendant's chair, his fingers drumming lightly against the table. The tension was suffocating. The world was watching. What would the jury decide? As the judge called the room to order, Musk stood and turned toward the jury box. He didn't know what the verdict would be, but at that moment, he realized that it no longer mattered. Whatever the outcome, he had said his piece. The truth was out there. His legacy, his future, it was no longer in his hands. Judge Daniels stepped forward. "The jury has reached a verdict," he said, his voice steady. "We will now hear their decision." Musk held his breath. And the rest of the defense team stood by, their faces a mix of anxiety and anticipation. The foreperson of the jury stood, the room falling into a silence so thick it felt like time had stopped. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Elon Musk, not guilty on all counts." The words hit Musk like a wave of relief and disbelief. A murmur spread throughout the room as the audience processed the verdict. Musk stood still, trying to absorb the weight of what had just happened. He had won. The trial was over. But more than that, he realized, this trial had given him something he hadn't anticipated, the chance to reflect on his life, his journey, and the choices that had brought him to this point. He wasn't just a billionaire, he was a man who had fought for a dream. He had made mistakes, yes. But he had also made something incredible. And as the courtroom began to empty, Musk took a deep breath. The road ahead was still uncertain, but now, he knew that he could face it with a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that his true journey had just begun. The moment the verdict was read, it felt like the weight of 1,000 pounds had been lifted from Elon Musk's shoulders. The room was filled with whispers, some of disbelief, others of triumph. Musk stood motionless, as if processing the moment in slow motion. His legal team, ecstatic with the result, exchanged congratulations, but Musk's mind was already somewhere else. He had won the battle, but the war, for his reputation, his legacy, his identity, was ongoing. The media outlets rushed to capture the moment, their cameras flashing in all directions, eager to catch any hint of emotion on Musk's face. As the crowd in the courtroom began to thin, he walked out with his team, their backs straight, their steps purposeful, but Musk's mind wasn't on the cameras or the reporters shouting questions. It was on what lay ahead. And Whitaker approached him, her expression a mixture of pride and professionalism. "You did it," she said with a grin, her voice full of genuine relief. Musk managed a faint smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Did I?" he asked quietly, almost to himself. The reality was settling in. He had been exonerated in the court of law, but what about the court of public opinion? The trial had been a spectacle, a reminder of how easily the media and society could turn against you. Would this victory be enough to repair the damage done? "Of course you did," and responded, not missing a beat. "Now it's time for you to reclaim your narrative. The world needs to know that you stood your ground, that you didn't just fight for yourself, but for your vision, for your team, for the future." Musk nodded, his thoughts distant. He knew the media would focus on the spectacle, the drama of the courtroom, but what he truly wanted to convey was something deeper. He wanted people to understand the purpose behind everything he had done, the dreams of a sustainable future, the quest to push humanity beyond the confines of Earth, and the relentless pursuit of innovation that had shaped his entire career. As he stepped into the car waiting for him outside the courthouse, the weight of the moment finally settled in. The streets of the city blurred past as he sat quietly, staring out the window. The victory was his, but what would he do with it? Where would he go from here? The questions seemed endless. But amidst the noise, one thing stood clear: his journey had never been about avoiding controversy or seeking popularity. It had always been about something greater. Back at SpaceX headquarters, Musk sat alone in his office, the silence almost deafening. The building was eerily quiet after the courtroom chaos, and as the late afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, he allowed himself a brief moment of solitude. He thought about the early days of SpaceX, the long hours spent in the garage, the constant push to make rockets that could not only reach space but return safely. He remembered the failures, the fiery crashes, the doubts from every direction, the ridicule from the experts who said it couldn't be done. But he had pushed forward. Against all odds, SpaceX had become a symbol of what could be achieved with determination and vision. And yet, even with all the progress, Musk had always felt like he was at war. The world watched, analyzed, and critiqued every step he took. His success was constantly scrutinized, his failures paraded as proof that his dreams were unrealistic. But none of that mattered, not anymore. The trial had made him realize something crucial: no matter how much you achieve, there will always be those who doubt you. And no matter how much you fight for a better future, the present will always come with its challenges. Musk's mind wandered back to the moments before the verdict was read, when his thoughts had been clouded with doubt. It was easy to forget why he had started when the noise grew louder. The pressures of the trial had taken a toll, but in that brief moment of reflection, he realized that it was not the court that defined him, it was his purpose. The belief that humanity deserved better, that they could do more, and that the only way forward was through risk and innovation. His phone buzzed, snapping him out of his thoughts. It was a message from his sister, Tosca. "Hey, heard the good news. You did it. But remember, you're more than this trial. You're changing the world. Don't forget that." Musk stared at the message for a moment, his sister's words echoing in his mind. It was true. The trial would pass, but his work, his mission, was far from over. There was more to do, more to achieve, and the world was waiting. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of meetings and calls. SpaceX was preparing for another launch, and Tesla had its own set of challenges ahead. But this time, Musk felt something different in the air. It wasn't just the relief of the trial being behind him, it was the recognition that the world was still full of untapped potential, waiting to be unlocked. By the time the night came, Musk had made a decision. It was time to stop looking backward and to start looking forward. The trial, the media, the accusations, they were just distractions. What truly mattered was the legacy he was building, the innovations he was pioneering, and the future he was shaping. There were more rockets to send into space, more sustainable energy solutions to develop, more breakthroughs to discover. As he looked out of his office window, watching the lights of the city flicker beneath him, Musk knew the journey wasn't over. It had only just begun. The world would continue to doubt him, to criticize him, to question his every move. But as long as he stayed true to his purpose, he knew he would always have the strength to move forward. He took a deep breath, his resolve solidifying. There was no turning back now. The next few weeks after the trial were a whirlwind of media appearances, interviews, and a flood of messages from colleagues, friends, and even adversaries. The media coverage of Elon Musk's courtroom triumph dominated the headlines, but despite the external celebrations, Musk felt an intense shift within himself. The victory in court was a significant milestone, but it did little to erase the underlying tensions and complexities that had always defined his journey. Musk had always been a man who thrived in high-stakes environments. He had made his fortune, built his companies, and altered the course of human history through innovation and risk-taking. But now, for the first time in a long while, he found himself questioning the purpose behind everything he had done. The legal victory had provided him with the momentary sense of relief he craved, but it wasn't enough. He had already achieved more than most could ever dream of, but there was still something nagging at him, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. The endless cycle of work, interviews, and public appearances had become a blur. At night, he often found himself staring out of his office window, thinking about the bigger picture. What did it all mean? What was the true purpose of his relentless drive? Was he just building companies, or was he working towards something more, a new world, a new era? One evening, as he sat at his desk late into the night, the sound of an incoming video call broke his concentration. It was from his longtime friend and SpaceX co-founder, Gwynne Shotwell. She appeared on the screen, her face lit by the glow of her own office. "Hey, Elon," Gwynne said, her voice calm and steady, but with an edge of concern. "I know things are chaotic right now, but I wanted to talk." Musk nodded, sitting up straight. "Of course. What's on your mind?" "I've been thinking about you lately," she said, choosing her words carefully. "I know you've been through a lot with the trial, but I can see you're still carrying a weight. You've always been driven, but this time, I think it's different." Musk sighed, leaning back in his chair. "You're right. It's been a lot to process. It's strange. I've spent my entire life pushing to make the impossible possible, and now I'm left wondering if I'm even on the right path anymore." Gwynne didn't speak immediately. Instead, she let the silence linger, allowing Musk the space to express his thoughts. She had always been a rock for him, someone who had witnessed the highs and lows of his journey firsthand. "You've always been about the future, Elon. About what's possible. And that hasn't changed," Gwynne finally said. "But maybe it's time to pause, take a step back, and really think about what matters most to you. You've built so much, but what's the bigger vision here? What's the legacy you want to leave behind? Musk looked at her, his mind racing. Gwyn's words resonated with him in a way he hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just about building more rockets or revolutionizing transportation. It wasn't even just about advancing humanity's potential. There was something deeper, something more personal, that he needed to confront. I've always thought about the big picture, Musk said quietly, his voice tinged with uncertainty. But I guess, maybe I've never really thought about how it all fits together. How the journey itself matters, not just the destination. Gwyn smiled softly, sensing that her words had struck a chord. Exactly. You've got the talent, the drive, and the vision to change the world. But don't forget that your journey isn't just about the next big project, it's about the people you're working with, the lives you're impacting, and the future you're shaping for everyone. For the first time in a long while, Musk allowed himself to consider the deeper meaning behind his work. He had always been driven by ambition and a desire to leave his mark on the world, but now he began to wonder if his relentless pursuit of progress had come at the expense of something else, his own happiness, his own sense of fulfillment. He realized that, for all the technological advancements he had spearheaded, there was still a part of him that felt disconnected, distant from the very world he sought to change. His success had come at a high cost, relationships had suffered, and personal sacrifices had been made. As much as he had fought for a better future, he had neglected to focus on the present, on the people who mattered most. Gwyn, sensing the shift in his thinking, spoke again. Elon, no one is asking you to stop. No one is asking you to slow down. But maybe it's time to redefine what success really means. Maybe it's not about just building the future, it's about finding balance and meaning along the way. Musk took a deep breath, letting her words sink in. He had always been about pushing the boundaries of human potential, but perhaps it was time to reframe that vision. Instead of just striving for the next big thing, perhaps he could focus on building something more holistic, something that not only pushed humanity forward but also nurtured the people around him, the team members, and the communities that would ultimately benefit from his work. As the call ended and the screen went dark, Musk sat in silence. The future of humanity, his companies, and his own legacy were all intertwined, but now he understood that true success was not just about innovation and progress. It was about building something that would not only change the world but also bring people together, create connections, and inspire others to dream big, just as he had. A few days later, Musk sat down with his team at SpaceX, brainstorming the next big steps for the company. But this time, something was different. As he listened to his engineers and visionaries pitch new ideas, he no longer felt the same pressure to be the lone innovator. He began to see the value in collaboration, in empowering others to step up and lead in their own ways. There was a subtle shift in the air, a shift from the intensity of competition to the possibility of community. Musk realized that his companies could still change the world, but they didn't have to do it alone. Together, they could create something greater than the sum of its parts. And with that realization, Elon Musk finally felt at peace. The future, he knew, would always be uncertain. But for the first time in a long time, he was ready to embrace it, not just as a visionary, but as a human being, part of a world that needed more than just innovation, it needed connection. Months had passed since the trial, and life had gradually settled back into its usual hectic rhythm. For Elon Musk, however, something had shifted. He had learned to listen more, to consider perspectives beyond his own. It wasn't just about the triumph of SpaceX or Tesla anymore, it was about the broader implications of his work. The bigger picture still loomed large in his mind, but Musk found himself seeking balance in the most unexpected places. It was during a routine meeting at SpaceX headquarters that Musk was confronted with a new challenge. The team was gearing up for a critical rocket launch, one that would mark another milestone in the company's ambitious plans for space exploration. But this time, there was something different about the discussions. There was a palpable tension in the room. Gwyn Shotwell was at the center of it, as always, but there was a visible unease in her usually confident demeanor. As the team reviewed the status reports, she paused, her gaze fixed on the screen displaying the projected launch window. "Elon," she began, her voice steady but tinged with concern. "We've hit a roadblock. It's not something we anticipated." Musk raised an eyebrow, his curiosity piqued. "What's going on?" She leaned forward, tapping the screen. "We've been in talks with the Department of Defense for potential military contracts. But we're facing pushback on the sustainability angle. They don't want to fund a project that's not guaranteed to align with their strategic interests." Musk took a moment to process the information. SpaceX had been moving toward a future where sustainability and space exploration went hand in hand. It was part of the company's long-term vision, making humanity a multiplanetary species while ensuring the preservation of Earth. But the DoD's reluctance brought up a key issue: could they truly reconcile the commercial goals of space travel with the needs of government agencies with military priorities? "Are we talking about the Green Energy Initiative?" Musk asked, referring to SpaceX's plans to use more sustainable materials and technologies for their rockets. "Exactly," Gwynn replied. "The DoD is still very traditional in its approach. They're not fully convinced that sustainability should be prioritized over other factors, especially military readiness." Musk thought about it for a moment. He had been advocating for sustainable technologies and had integrated them into nearly every aspect of his companies. But this new reality, the reality of having to balance military interests with environmental ones, was something he hadn't fully anticipated. He had to admit, the situation was far more complicated than he had imagined. "Maybe we need to rethink our approach," Musk said after a brief pause, his tone thoughtful. "It's not just about green tech anymore. It's about showing that sustainability doesn't compromise the mission. If we can prove that our rockets can be both environmentally friendly and capable of fulfilling the Defense Department's needs, then we win." Gwynn nodded, clearly relieved that Musk was not backing down. "Exactly. We need to find common ground without compromising our core principles." As the days went by, Musk spent more time with Gwynn and other members of the team to brainstorm possible solutions. It wasn't just about tweaking the existing designs, it was about completely rethinking the way SpaceX approached these dual goals. Musk's typical high-stakes, visionary approach was being tested in a way it never had been before. There was the weight of military contracts, the pressure of sustainability, and now the task of convincing an increasingly skeptical public that SpaceX's ambitions were aligned with the long-term welfare of the planet. Then, an unexpected ally appeared, a former military strategist named Rick Taylor, who had recently joined SpaceX as part of their government relations team. Musk had been skeptical at first. Rick's background was rooted in defense contracts, not in the idealistic world of sustainable technologies that SpaceX had championed. But as it turned out, Rick was not only highly respected in the defense community, but he also shared Musk's vision for innovation. Rick was calm, methodical, and highly persuasive, and he quickly became Musk's sounding board for navigating the complicated world of government contracts. Unlike others who simply saw the defense sector as a financial opportunity, Rick saw a chance to drive technological progress within an industry that had long been resistant to change. In one particular meeting, Rick offered Musk a fresh perspective. "Elon," Rick said, leaning back in his chair as he spoke, "you've been pushing the envelope on everything from electric cars to space travel. But the truth is, there's no real space race without government funding. The military is still one of the biggest players in the game. The challenge is to align your ideals with their needs." Musk looked at him, intrigued. "What's your solution?" "You need to show them that innovation and defense are not mutually exclusive," Rick explained. "It's not about taking a step back from sustainability. It's about positioning SpaceX as the leader in both green tech and military readiness. If we can make the case that SpaceX's rockets are as capable as anything else out there, while also being better for the planet, we win." It was a simple yet powerful proposition, and Musk felt his excitement building again. This was the kind of challenge he thrived on, finding the intersection of seemingly opposing goals and creating something new from it. As the weeks wore on, Musk and Rick worked together to reshape SpaceX's pitch to the Defense Department. They emphasized the dual benefits of their sustainable technologies, not just as a way to reduce carbon footprints, but as a means of ensuring that future military missions would be both effective and environmentally responsible. They used data to demonstrate that SpaceX's reusable rockets were not only cost-efficient but also offered superior reliability and performance compared to traditional models. Meanwhile, Musk continued to work with Gwynne and the rest of the team on a new set of plans to take SpaceX to the next level. The defense contracts were important, but they were just one piece of the puzzle. Musk knew that the real game-changer lay in SpaceX's ability to merge its two distinct missions, innovation for the benefit of humanity and sustainability for the future of Earth. The day came when Musk, Gwynne, and Rick sat in a high-level meeting with the Department of Defense. There were generals and strategists present, their faces stern as they evaluated the proposal that Musk and his team had worked tirelessly on. The tension in the room was palpable. The future of SpaceX's military collaboration, and its mission to the stars, hung in the balance. Musk took a deep breath before speaking. "We are not just building rockets, we are building the future. The future of humanity. And it's a future that is both sustainable and powerful. Together, we can ensure that SpaceX is the leader in both defense and innovation. We don't have to choose between military readiness and environmental responsibility. We can have both." It was a bold statement, one that encapsulated the very essence of Musk's vision. The room fell silent as the Defense Department officials exchanged looks, the weight of Musk's words settling over them. For the first time in this process, Musk felt a sense of hope, knowing that this unlikely partnership might just be the key to securing both the future of space travel and a sustainable planet. The days following the meeting with the Department of Defense felt like a waiting game for Elon Musk and his team at SpaceX. Despite their best efforts, the decision was still up in the air. It wasn't uncommon for government contracts to take time, especially when the stakes were as high as this one. The looming question that occupied Musk's mind, however, was no longer just about securing the contract. It was about whether his vision for the future, one of sustainable space exploration, could ever fully align with the interests of the government, whose priorities were often tied to power, control, and defense. Though the pressure was mounting, Musk took solace in one thing: he wasn't alone. He had built a team that shared his ambition to reach for the stars, and that was more important than anything else. Together, they were poised to tackle challenges that seemed insurmountable, if not today, then in the future. Despite the uncertainty surrounding the government deal, Musk's mind was busy with new ideas, even bolder than before. Over the years, he had become known for pushing boundaries, but he had also learned that true innovation was about navigating the gray areas, about embracing contradictions and turning them into strengths. In the face of adversity, Musk had a unique ability to see opportunity where others saw failure. His companies, Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and the Boring Company, were all proof of this. Musk knew that the future of SpaceX didn't depend solely on government contracts. It was about shaping the narrative, redefining space exploration, and eventually making humanity a multiplanetary species. But he also understood that this narrative had to be more than just technological feats. It had to resonate with people. A few days later, Elon and Gwynne were meeting in Musk's office, a sleek modern space overlooking the city. The view, while impressive, didn't seem to register with Musk as much as it usually did. His mind was elsewhere, focused on something more urgent. "I've been thinking a lot lately," he said, rubbing his hands together as he stared out the window. "About what the future could look like for SpaceX. About how we frame it." Gwynne, sensing the weight of his thoughts, crossed her arms. "What do you mean? What if we make the moon mission a public spectacle? Not just a one-off project, but an ongoing mission that the world can follow?" Musk's eyes lit up as he spoke. What if SpaceX becomes not just a company, but the center of humanity's collective dream to reach beyond Earth? Gwynne tilted her head. "A public spectacle? Think about it. If we make the journey to the moon, to Mars, to the stars, a shared experience, something people can get behind, something they can root for, then we're not just building rockets. We're building a movement. We're inspiring the next generation of engineers, scientists, and dreamers. It was an idea that intrigued Gwyn, though she hesitated at first. That's an ambitious idea, Elon. But do you think people are ready for that kind of vision? It's not just about the technology, it's about the people. Musk nodded. That's exactly what I mean. It's about telling a story that connects with people. It's about making them feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves. We're not just exploring space for exploration's sake. We're giving humanity a purpose. A reason to dream again. Gwyn didn't need much convincing. Elon had a way of making the impossible seem not only achievable, but inevitable. SpaceX had already captured the world's attention in a way no other company had, but Musk was right, there was more potential there, untapped, waiting to be unlocked. This could be huge, she said after a pause. But we need to get it right. People don't just want to see a rocket launch, they want to see the why behind it. The mission, the purpose. If we can make them believe in what we're doing, they'll follow us anywhere. As the weeks passed, Musk began shaping this vision into something concrete. SpaceX began to leak teaser footage and marketing campaigns that hinted at something monumental on the horizon. But it wasn't just about rocket science anymore. It was about weaving the story of human progress, of overcoming obstacles, and of coming together to achieve the impossible. The concept was simple, a mission to the moon wasn't just a scientific endeavor, it was a global event. Elon Musk was determined to turn space exploration into a shared human experience. Every launch would be an opportunity to connect with millions of people around the world, giving them a front-row seat to the greatest journey of their lives. SpaceX's next big project wasn't just about conquering space. It was about making the journey feel personal. They would document every step of the mission, the planning, the preparation, the setbacks, and the breakthroughs. The idea was to turn the pursuit of the stars into a story that anyone, anywhere, could feel a part of. Musk saw a future where children in schools around the world would gather to watch rocket launches in real time, where families would watch with wonder as the first manned missions to Mars unfolded before their eyes. But there was more to it. Musk wasn't just thinking about the moon. He had his sights set on Mars, and beyond that, on a future where humanity could one day live on other planets. It was a dream that was still far from reality, but the idea of involving the public, of making them feel like they were invested in that dream, was something Musk was passionate about. One night, as Musk sat in his office staring at the plans for the next big SpaceX launch, a notification popped up on his screen. It was from Rick Taylor, the former military strategist turned SpaceX ally. "Elon, I've just heard back from the Department of Defense," the message read. "They've agreed to a meeting next week to discuss potential contracts. They're interested in exploring the sustainability angle more, especially if it aligns with military needs." A rush of excitement hit Musk's chest. This was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. The DoD wasn't just interested in what SpaceX could do for them, they were seeing the broader vision. It was a pivotal moment, one that confirmed that Musk's belief in the long-term value of sustainability, even in the context of defense, was beginning to pay off. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? With the green light from the Department of Defense, the stakes for SpaceX couldn't have been higher. Elon Musk had faced many challenges throughout his career, but this was different. This deal, this contract, wasn't just about rockets or space missions, it was about the future of both SpaceX and the planet itself. If Musk could navigate these waters, he could prove once and for all that sustainability and defense could coexist in the most unlikely ways. The meeting with the Department of Defense was scheduled for the following week, and Musk's team was preparing for what could be a pivotal moment in the company's history. Gwyn Shotwell was a steady hand in the midst of the storm, ensuring the presentation was as polished as possible. Rick Taylor, the military strategist who had become invaluable to Musk in recent months, was taking the lead on the defense-related aspects of the proposal. Together, they were formulating a pitch that combined the best of both worlds, cutting-edge technology with military readiness. On the day of the meeting, Musk found himself in the familiar high-stakes environment of government contracts, but this time, there was more on the line. The room was packed with high-ranking officials, military leaders, and defense contractors, all with their eyes fixed on Musk as he walked into the room. The air felt thick with anticipation, and Musk's pulse quickened in response. This was no ordinary pitch, this was the future of SpaceX. He began his presentation with the usual confidence, showing off the impressive stats on SpaceX's reusable rocket technology. He talked about their cost-saving measures, the years of testing and development, and their proven track record in launching satellites and cargo into orbit. But this time, Musk also made sure to highlight the sustainability factor. SpaceX isn't just about launching rockets, Musk said, his voice steady. We are building a future where space exploration can coexist with a commitment to preserving Earth. We're talking about reducing carbon emissions, using sustainable materials, and creating technology that can stand the test of time. There was a murmur among the officials, but no one interrupted. Musk knew that this wasn't about impressing them with technology alone, it was about connecting with their deeper concerns. He wanted them to see the bigger picture, to understand that this wasn't just a technological race, it was a fight for the survival of the planet, and SpaceX was leading the charge. We've already seen the power of reusable rockets. With the military's backing, we can take that to new heights. We can provide not just defense capabilities, but a sustainable, cost-effective solution for missions that protect not only our country but our world. It was the kind of rhetoric that Musk excelled at, bold, visionary, and focused on the long-term impact. Yet, as he spoke, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He could see the defense officials exchanging glances, some nodding in approval, others with a slight furrow in their brows. There was a subtle undercurrent of tension in the room. Rick Taylor, sitting beside Musk, gave him a quick nod, signaling that everything was going according to plan. But Musk's gut told him that there was more to this meeting than met the eye. As the presentation ended, Musk opened the floor to questions. The first question came from a high-ranking official, General Bradley Thompson, whose piercing eyes seemed to evaluate Musk with a level of scrutiny that Musk wasn't used to. Elon, the general began, I appreciate the technological innovations you've brought to the table. But let's be clear, we're not here to save the planet. We're here to protect national security. What assurances can you give us that your sustainability initiatives won't compromise our defense priorities? Musk didn't flinch. General, I understand your concerns, and I want to make it clear that the goal here isn't just to protect the planet, it's to ensure the safety and security of our country. Sustainability doesn't mean sacrificing strength or readiness. In fact, the two are intertwined. The technology we're developing is not just environmentally friendly, it's also reliable and ready for the demands of military operations. The room was quiet for a moment as the officials absorbed his words. Musk could feel the weight of their expectations, but he also knew that he couldn't back down. This wasn't just a business deal, it was a mission. But just as the conversation seemed to be turning in his favor, the deal-breaker came. A voice, calm and calculated, spoke from the back of the room. Elon, said the voice, we understand the potential of your technology, but we have to be clear about one thing, while your sustainability goals are admirable, they do not take priority over military needs. If we're going to back SpaceX, we need to be assured that your environmental focus won't interfere with our defense strategies. Musk's heart skipped a beat. He had been anticipating some form of pushback, but this was different. The question wasn't about the feasibility of the technology, it was about the core principles of SpaceX itself. For a moment, the room seemed to stand still. Musk felt a rush of conflicting emotions. On one hand, he understood the weight of the general's words. Military contracts weren't just about cutting-edge technology, they were about the security of the nation. On the other hand, Musk knew that the future wasn't just about defense, it was about finding a way to protect the planet and ensure humanity's survival in the long run. He took a deep breath and leaned forward. "I understand your concerns," Musk said, his voice calm but firm. "But I'm here to tell you that we don't have to choose between sustainability and defense. SpaceX is committed to both. Our technology is not just green, it's built for the future. And the future demands that we adapt, that we think beyond short-term solutions." There was silence in the room as Musk's words lingered. The officials exchanged glances, and for a brief moment, it seemed as though the deal was hanging in the balance. Finally, General Thompson spoke again. "We'll need some time to consider your proposal, Elon. This is a significant decision, and we can't make it lightly." Musk nodded, his mind racing as he gathered his thoughts. The meeting had gone well in some respects, but he knew that the true battle was far from over. This wasn't just about a single contract, it was about the long-term vision he had for SpaceX and the future of space exploration. As the meeting wrapped up and Musk walked out of the room, he realized one thing: SpaceX had already won. No matter what the final decision would be, they had already succeeded in framing the future of space travel as something bigger than just technology. They had made the world take notice, and that, in itself, was a victory. The following days after the meeting with the Department of Defense were filled with an unsettling calm. Elon Musk found himself in his usual mode, absorbed in the daily grind, dealing with the relentless demands of SpaceX's operations and Tesla's innovations, all while waiting for the DoD's response. Yet, a nagging feeling lingered in the back of his mind. The general's question, the one about prioritizing defense over sustainability, had struck a chord in him, and Musk couldn't shake the feeling that the issue wasn't yet resolved. It wasn't long before he got the call. It was a Wednesday morning, and as usual, Musk was standing in front of a whiteboard at the SpaceX headquarters, scribbling down ideas for a new project. His assistant, Jenna, entered the room with her usual efficient air. "Elon, there's a call from General Thompson," Jenna said, her tone neutral. "It's urgent." Musk's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't sure what the urgency meant, but one thing was clear: the general hadn't been in a rush to reach out since the meeting. "Put him through," Musk replied, trying to sound calm despite the unease creeping up his spine. Moments later, the voice of General Bradley Thompson echoed through the receiver. "Elon, we need to talk. It's about the proposal we discussed last week. We've had some internal discussions, and frankly, we've hit a wall." Musk raised an eyebrow. "What kind of wall?" "Well, as you know, our priorities aren't just about tech. But it's not just that. Some of the senior officials are concerned that your approach to sustainability could actually put us in a tough spot down the line. The potential for what I'll call mission creep has them worried. They're wondering if SpaceX can really guarantee that it won't get distracted by these lofty environmental goals at the expense of military readiness." Musk paused. The last thing he wanted was to get involved in a tug-of-war over principles. This wasn't about him or SpaceX anymore, it was about the future of humanity. But he understood that the stakes were high, and diplomacy was key. "General, I get it. But here's the thing, SpaceX is committed to both. If anything, the technologies we're developing, reusable rockets, clean energy solutions, are just as much a part of ensuring military readiness as anything else. They make us more efficient, more effective, and more adaptable in the long run. The question shouldn't be whether we can balance these goals. It should be about how we can use this new approach to set a precedent for future missions." The line was quiet for a moment, and Musk could almost feel Thompson weighing his words carefully. "Look, Elon, I hear you. But I've got to be honest with you. The political pressures are too high. There are factions within the defense community who see this as a potential distraction. They're not ready to take such risks. They want results, and they want them now. So here's the deal. We want to move forward with some of the work you've outlined, but we need a more direct path. Less about the future of space for everyone, more about immediate, tangible military objectives. No more long-term visions. If you can agree to that, we might have something. Musk felt a sinking sensation in his chest. This wasn't the future he had envisioned. He wasn't willing to compromise SpaceX's bigger mission for short-term gains. SpaceX was more than just a contractor, it was a pioneer, and Musk wasn't prepared to let anyone, especially not the military, limit that vision. "General, I understand your position," Musk replied, his voice firm. "But my vision for SpaceX, for humanity's future, doesn't revolve around short-term military objectives. It revolves around long-term sustainability and progress. I'm not willing to dilute that vision just to satisfy some political agendas. If SpaceX is going to work with the Department of Defense, it's going to be on our terms." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and Musk could almost hear the wheels turning in Thompson's mind. "Elon," Thompson said, breaking the silence, "I didn't want to tell you this, but I think you need to know. You're not just up against the Department of Defense on this one. There's a growing political pressure from other contractors. Big players. They see your success and they don't like it. And they're going to do whatever they can to push you out." Musk's pulse quickened. This wasn't just a matter of internal defense politics anymore. It was a fight for control of the future of space. And for Musk, there was only one path forward. "I appreciate the heads up, General," Musk said, his voice unwavering. "But let me be clear. This is more than a contract for me. This is about the future of humanity. If the Department of Defense can't see that, then maybe SpaceX isn't the right partner after all." There was another pause, longer this time, before Thompson responded. "Understood, Elon. But you might want to reconsider your position. These are powerful people we're dealing with. They don't take no for an answer." Musk hung up the phone, the weight of the conversation sinking in. As he stared out the window of his office, he couldn't help but wonder just how deep the opposition against him ran. There were powerful people who would do anything to keep the status quo intact, and that meant stopping Musk and SpaceX from achieving their revolutionary goals. But Musk wasn't in this fight for the easy path. If anything, the challenge made him more determined. Later that evening, as Musk gathered with his inner circle to discuss the latest developments, he could see the unease in their eyes. Gwynne Shotwell, Rick Taylor, and the rest of the team were all aware of the political landscape shifting beneath them. Everyone knew the DoD contract could be a game-changer, but now it seemed the deal might come with more strings attached than they were willing to accept. "We're facing pressure from all sides now," Gwynne said, breaking the silence as they sat around a large conference table. "The military wants results, and they want them fast. But that doesn't mean we compromise on our principles. We can't." "I agree," Musk said, leaning back in his chair. "This isn't just about getting the contract. It's about proving that space exploration isn't just for the military. It's for humanity. And we can't back down from that." Rick Taylor nodded. "Then we need to be ready for a fight. The more success you have, the more people are going to come after you. And we need to have a strategy to deal with that." Musk's gaze hardened as he considered their words. "Let's prepare for whatever comes next. But remember, we're not just fighting for a contract, we're fighting for the future." As the days went by, Elon Musk became more determined than ever. The forces aligned against him were many, but he had one thing they didn't: vision. And he wasn't about to let anyone stand in the way of shaping that future. SpaceX's mission was bigger than any one contract. It was bigger than any one player. Musk was in it for the long haul, and he was ready to take on whatever challenge lay ahead. The pressure had been mounting steadily for weeks now. Elon Musk had anticipated the challenges ahead, but the level of opposition he was encountering from entrenched powers was something he hadn't fully prepared for. SpaceX was no longer just a company, it had become the battleground for a larger war. And in this war, the stakes were higher than ever before. This was about control over the future of space exploration, over innovation, and most importantly, over the vision Musk had been pushing forward since the very beginning, a future that wasn't just about technological advancement, but about ensuring the survival of humanity. Musk had made his stance clear to the Department of Defense. He wasn't going to compromise his vision of sustainability and long-term progress for short-term military gains. But that didn't mean he wasn't willing to fight for what mattered. The weeks following his phone conversation with General Thompson were tense. SpaceX's team had begun preparing for every possible outcome, refining proposals and contingency plans, but Elon knew the hardest battles were yet to come. The political and military players were powerful, and their resolve to prevent any further erosion of their control was unwavering. Yet, Musk remained resolute. "We're not here to play it safe," he told Gwynne Shotwell one morning as they sat in the conference room reviewing the latest updates. "We're here to push boundaries. They're scared of that, and we have to keep pushing. This isn't just about rockets and satellites, it's about shifting the entire paradigm of space travel. We can't let them shut that down." Gwynne nodded, her face set with determination. "We're with you on this, Elon. Whatever comes next, we're all in." SpaceX's battle wasn't just being fought on one front. While the Department of Defense had become the primary opponent, other contractors, those who had held the monopoly over military space contracts for decades, were beginning to make their move. Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, the big players in the defense industry were now closely monitoring SpaceX, looking for any opportunity to undercut Musk's company and prevent it from gaining further traction. Musk knew this. He also knew that the government wasn't just going to hand over the keys to the future of space exploration without a fight. It was all a game of influence, negotiation, and strategy. And he had to play his cards wisely. But the true game-changer came unexpectedly. It wasn't another meeting with the DoD or a phone call from an anonymous adversary. It came in the form of a public statement, one that would reshape the dynamics entirely. It happened at a high-profile space conference in Washington, D.C. Musk had been invited to speak about the future of space exploration, and as usual, he had no intention of holding back. He knew the risks of speaking his mind so openly, but the alternative, playing nice and sticking to the status quo, was never an option. If he was going to change the course of history, he had to make his case loud and clear. As Musk took the stage, a ripple of excitement spread through the crowd. There was always a certain energy whenever Elon Musk was about to speak. People were eager to hear what he had to say, and this time was no different. But this time, the stakes felt higher. "Good afternoon, everyone," Musk began, his voice steady and measured. "It's an honor to be here with so many people who are passionate about the future of space. I believe that humanity's future is in space, that much is clear. But there's something else that's just as important: sustainability. Space exploration can't just be about advancing technology and security. It must be about ensuring that we protect the very planet we're launching from." There was a brief pause as the audience digested his words. Musk knew his statement would be controversial, but it was a risk he was willing to take. If we're serious about exploring other worlds, about building colonies on Mars and beyond, we can't ignore the challenges we face on Earth. Climate change, resource depletion, and the loss of biodiversity, these are all real problems, and they're not going to disappear just because we launch a few rockets into space. He paused again, letting the weight of his words sink in. At SpaceX, we're committed to creating a future that isn't just about building rockets. It's about building a future that ensures the survival of humanity, not just on Earth, but in space. This isn't about short-term military objectives or political posturing. This is about the future of all of us. The crowd erupted in applause. Musk wasn't naive, he knew there would be critics. But he also knew that he had struck a chord with those who shared his vision. He had taken the risk, and it had paid off. As he stepped off the stage, he was immediately approached by reporters, all eager to get his take on his bold statements. But it wasn't the media attention that concerned him now, it was the message he had just delivered to the world. SpaceX wasn't just a private company competing with others. It was leading the charge for a new kind of future, a future that prioritized humanity's long-term survival over the narrow interests of entrenched industries. That evening, as Musk sat in his hotel room preparing for the next phase of his plan, his phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was from General Thompson. "Elon, we need to talk," the general's voice said, his tone more serious than usual. Musk's pulse quickened, but he kept his composure. "What's going on, General?" "We've been monitoring your comments today," Thompson said, his voice cautious. "And we've had some discussions with the higher-ups. I won't sugarcoat it, we've got a situation here." Musk's instincts told him this wasn't going to be a simple conversation. "What kind of situation?" "The political climate around your project has shifted. There's significant pushback from some of the top brass in the DoD. They've seen your statements, and they're concerned about the direction SpaceX is taking. They don't want this to become an ideological war. They want results, and they want them now. They're saying your approach is too ambitious, too uncertain. They're asking for something more concrete, something that shows you can deliver without the philosophical baggage." Musk felt his frustration rising. "General, I'm not in this to play politics. SpaceX isn't about ideology, it's about ensuring humanity's future, both on Earth and in space. If they can't see that, then we don't belong in this partnership." There was a long pause on the other end of the line before Thompson finally spoke. "I don't know if you fully understand the situation, Elon. But I want you to know that there are powerful people in Washington who will do whatever it takes to shut you down. And they've already begun to mobilize. If you want to continue this fight, you'll need to take things to the next level." Musk's mind raced. He had expected resistance, but this was different. The forces arrayed against him were more formidable than he had anticipated. Yet, Musk knew one thing for certain, this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. And he wasn't backing down. He squared his shoulders and made up his mind. "Tell them to bring it on. SpaceX isn't going anywhere." Elon Musk was no stranger to resistance. From early on in his career, he'd faced doubts and dismissals. Whether it was Tesla's slow start or SpaceX's early failures, he had always fought back, driven by the unyielding belief that innovation was worth the struggle. But this time felt different. The stakes had escalated, and the opposition wasn't just about proving people wrong, it was about something far bigger. As the political and military forces aligned against SpaceX grew stronger, Musk knew it was only a matter of time before the next move came. General Thompson's warning had been a catalyst for Musk's resolve. He wasn't going to let powerful factions in Washington or the military-industrial complex derail his vision for the future. This wasn't just a fight for a government contract, this was a fight for the direction of humanity's future in space. And he wasn't about to back down. Days after his bold statements at the Washington, D.C. conference, Musk gathered his inner circle at SpaceX headquarters. Gwynne Shotwell, Rick Taylor, and the rest of the leadership team were all present, their faces a mix of concern and determination. It was clear to everyone in the room that SpaceX was on the verge of something huge. But the political pushback threatened to pull it all apart. "Elon, we've seen the responses from the DoD," Gwynne began, her voice steady but concerned. "There's a lot of talk about your public stance and how it's affecting the political climate. The military's top brass is digging in their heels. They don't want to play in the space of sustainability, they want something they can measure right now." "I know," Musk replied, a fire igniting in his eyes. "But they're missing the point. This isn't about some quick, measurable result. It's about positioning humanity for the future. If they can't see that, then maybe they're not the right partner for us." Rick Taylor, the company's chief technology officer, leaned forward. "We've been pushing hard on the technological front. But if we're going to keep advancing, we need the DoD's backing, at least for the short term. I think we should consider negotiating." Musk raised a hand to stop him. "We're not negotiating principles. We've already laid the groundwork for a new kind of future. A future that doesn't just belong to the military, but to everyone. And I won't water that down just to win a contract." The room fell silent. Gwyn exchanged a glance with Rick before speaking again. "Elon, we need to be strategic. I get what you're saying, but right now, they control the purse strings. We can't afford to alienate them entirely, especially when the stakes are this high." Musk understood the sentiment. He wasn't naive, he knew the importance of staying on good terms with the military. But he also knew that compromising now would send a message that SpaceX's principles weren't worth standing up for. He wasn't going to let that happen. "We'll stand our ground," Musk said, his voice unwavering. "But we'll do it in a way that keeps the door open for future partnerships. It's not just about being right, it's about being strategic. We need to get the message out that SpaceX is here to stay, and we're not afraid to challenge the status quo." As they continued their strategy session, Musk could feel the weight of the situation pressing on him. He knew that if SpaceX was to succeed in this battle, they would need to rally not just the political elite, but the public as well. The people who believed in SpaceX's vision needed to see that their future was intertwined with the company's mission. This wasn't just about rockets and satellites. This was about reshaping humanity's relationship with space. Later that evening, Musk took a late-night call from one of his key allies, a renowned space policy expert named Sarah Wilkes. She had been a vocal advocate for SpaceX's approach and had connections across Washington that Musk needed to tap into. "Elon, I've been hearing some rumblings in Washington," Sarah said, her voice tense. "The opposition to your position is growing stronger, and there's been a significant shift in the tone of the conversations happening in the halls of power. People are questioning whether you're the right partner for this mission, and some are saying it's time for someone else to take the reins. The political tide is turning." Musk leaned forward in his chair, the weight of the situation beginning to settle over him. "I knew it was coming. But I won't let them push us out. We've worked too hard to get here." Sarah continued, "I've been talking to some of your allies in Washington, and there's a window here for you. But you need to act quickly. The pressure on the DoD to back off is mounting, but only if they see the public backing. You have to show them that the American people are behind SpaceX's vision, and that this fight isn't just for you, it's for the future." Musk sat in silence, contemplating Sarah's words. The public's support had always been a core part of SpaceX's strategy. If the people believed in their mission, it could tip the scales in their favor. Musk wasn't a politician, but he knew how to connect with people. It was time to make that connection clearer than ever. "We'll mobilize," Musk said, his voice sharp. "We'll show them that the people want SpaceX to succeed. We'll take the fight to the streets, to social media, to every corner of the country. This isn't just a corporate battle, it's a fight for humanity's future." The next few days were a whirlwind. Musk and his team worked tirelessly to draft public statements, hold press conferences, and push their message out to as many people as possible. They launched a social media campaign to rally public support, highlighting the broader vision of SpaceX, not just as a private company but as a force for positive change. Musk's message was clear: the future of space wasn't just about military dominance, it was about advancing humanity, ensuring the survival of the human race, and giving people a reason to dream beyond Earth's confines. As the campaign grew, so did the public's response. Messages of support flooded in from all over the world. People from all walks of life, scientists, students, entrepreneurs, and everyday citizens, rallied behind Musk's vision. It wasn't just about rockets, it was about building a better future. The pressure on Washington began to mount. Politicians, who had previously been silent on the matter, began to speak out in favor of SpaceX. Public opinion was shifting, and the DoD couldn't ignore it any longer. But the battle was far from over. Musk knew that the next step would be even harder. He wasn't just fighting for a contract anymore, he was fighting for the very principles that had driven SpaceX from the beginning. The following weeks were filled with an unrelenting tension. The lines had been drawn, and the battle for the future of space was now firmly entrenched in the realm of public perception. Elon Musk's social media campaign had worked wonders, and public support was overwhelmingly in SpaceX's favor. But this wasn't just a popularity contest. Washington, with its power brokers and decision-makers, still held the keys to the next stage of SpaceX's journey. The question remained, would they give up their control over space contracts, or would they dig in their heels and deny Musk's vision? Musk, ever the optimist, wasn't about to let public sentiment be the end of the story. He knew that the real battle would take place in the halls of government, where deals were made, and allegiances were formed. The question was, who would have the courage to stand up to the entrenched interests in Washington? One evening, Musk was sitting at his desk at SpaceX headquarters, his eyes glued to the series of reports that had come in over the last 24 hours. There was a buzz of activity in the building, and Musk could feel the growing intensity from his team. They had their work cut out for them. Gwynne Shotwell walked into the room, her expression serious. "Elon, we've got something. The DoD's been in talks with some of the largest defense contractors in the country. There's talk of a joint venture that could potentially block us out of any future military contracts." Musk leaned back in his chair, pinching the bridge of his nose. He wasn't surprised. The defense industry had a lot of power, and they wouldn't give up easily. "They're trying to form a coalition to push us out of the game?" Musk asked, his voice low and controlled. Gwynne nodded. "Exactly. They know that SpaceX's dominance is a real threat. If we continue to corner the market on affordable, reliable space launches, it could disrupt everything. They're not just looking to slow us down, they're looking to eliminate us entirely." Musk took a deep breath. He'd expected this, and it wasn't the first time he had faced overwhelming odds. But this time, the stakes were higher. This was about more than just building rockets, it was about shaping the future of humanity's role in space. He couldn't afford to let it slip away. "We can't back down," Musk said, his eyes narrowing with determination. "We have to show them that we're here for the long haul. We're not just a contractor, we're the future of space exploration." Gwynne raised an eyebrow. "How do we do that?" Musk smiled, a glint of mischief in his eyes. "By showing them just how much we've already done, and how much we're capable of. SpaceX isn't just about rockets. It's about revolutionizing the industry. We'll take this fight to the next level, and we'll make sure the public knows exactly what's at stake." It was clear that Musk's approach would be bold. He wasn't interested in fighting a quiet, behind-the-scenes battle. This time, he was going to put everything on the line. The next day, Musk and his team held an urgent meeting with Sarah Wilkes, the space policy expert who had been a key ally in shaping the public narrative. They needed to prepare for the next big push, the one that would put all the pressure on Washington. "Elon, I've been speaking to some of your allies in Congress," Sarah began, her voice tense. "It's clear the military-industrial complex is trying to lock down the next big contract, and they're working with all the power players. But there's a window here for you. If you push the narrative hard enough, the momentum could shift in your favor." Musk leaned in, his eyes sharp. "What do we need to do?" Sarah hesitated for a moment before continuing. "We need a rallying cry. The kind of public support that can't be ignored. We've been talking to media outlets, and we have a chance to run a major op-ed campaign, one that makes clear why SpaceX's vision for space exploration is in the public's best interest, not just the defense industry's." Gwynne spoke up. "And the timing is crucial. If we hit them with this at the right moment, it could push the conversation from behind closed doors to the front pages of every major newspaper in the country." Musk's mind was already racing. He knew exactly how to frame the message. It wasn't just about SpaceX's success, it was about the future of humanity. He had always seen the potential for space exploration to open doors for economic, scientific, and even social progress. The narrative would focus on how SpaceX wasn't just about technology but about enabling a future that could benefit everyone. "I'm ready," Musk said decisively. "Let's make sure this message resonates across every corner of the country. We need the American people to know what we're fighting for." The next few days were filled with meetings and phone calls as SpaceX's team crafted the most compelling, persuasive narrative they had ever put together. The op-eds were written, the media contacts were established, and a strategy for rolling out the campaign was devised. Then, the moment came. The op-eds, penned by Musk himself, were published in major outlets across the country, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal. They were powerful pieces, filled with Musk's trademark vision and conviction. He didn't just talk about the immediate future of SpaceX, he spoke to the broader vision, the dream of making humanity a multiplanetary species, and how SpaceX was the only company pushing that goal forward. Musk made it clear that the military-industrial complex's stranglehold on space contracts was an outdated system. It was a system that prioritized profits over progress, control over innovation. And most importantly, it was a system that failed to see the bigger picture. "Space is not just for the elite or the military," Musk wrote. "It is a shared frontier, one that should benefit all of humanity. Our mission at SpaceX is not just to build rockets, but to create a future in which the people of Earth can look up and dream of a tomorrow where we are not confined to one planet, but are free to explore the stars." The op-ed struck a chord. The public response was overwhelming. People, especially younger generations, rallied behind Musk's vision, seeing it not just as a corporate pursuit, but as the dream of a better future. In Washington, the political pressure grew. The public support for SpaceX was undeniable. The tide was turning. But Musk knew better than anyone, this fight was far from over. The roar of public support for SpaceX continued to reverberate across the nation, but as Musk knew too well, the fight was far from over. Washington wasn't about to relinquish its grip on space contracts without a battle. The military-industrial complex, threatened by Musk's bold stance, was not going to let SpaceX have its way without a major counterattack. As Musk paced around his office, his mind buzzed with the weight of the situation. SpaceX was on the verge of something incredible, but now the company was on a collision course with some of the most powerful entities in the country. The stakes had never been higher. He had made his stance clear, and the public had rallied behind him. But the entrenched interests in Washington were still pushing hard to maintain control. Musk wasn't naive. He knew how the game was played. The military-industrial complex had its fingers in everything from government contracts to the lobbying power that controlled so much of Washington's decisions. These were not the kinds of forces that could be easily beaten back with words alone. It was time for a new approach. He gathered his closest allies around a conference table at SpaceX headquarters. Gwynne Shotwell, Rick Taylor, Sarah Wilkes, and a few key legal advisors were all present. The atmosphere in the room was charged, as everyone knew the conversation they were about to have could shape the future of SpaceX, and the future of space exploration itself. "Elon, the political situation is heating up," Gwynne said, her voice tinged with concern. "The DoD is not taking kindly to our challenge. They've started pushing back even harder, and now there's talk of ramping up military contracts with other companies, especially Lockheed Martin and Boeing." Musk leaned forward, his eyes focused. "We've anticipated this. The stakes have only gone up, and we're not backing down. If they want a fight, they'll get one. But we need to think beyond just winning a contract. This is about redefining what the future of space looks like." Rick Taylor, ever the pragmatist, spoke up. "It's one thing to have public opinion on our side, but the government still controls the purse strings. If we want to shift the narrative and get them to bend, we need to bring some real pressure." Musk nodded, deep in thought. He knew that his personal push for a future where humanity was free to explore the stars couldn't just be a battle of ideals. It had to be more than just rhetoric, it had to be a strategy that resonated with both the public and the political elite. That meant taking the fight directly to the heart of Washington. "We're going to need to force their hand," Musk said, his voice firm. "We've got the people behind us. Now we need to make them see that they have no choice but to get on board. It's time to bring the full weight of SpaceX's accomplishments to bear." Gwynn raised an eyebrow. "What do you have in mind?" "We're going to make sure the American people see the truth about the military-industrial complex's stranglehold on space contracts," Musk said. "But more importantly, we're going to push for real reform. We need to show that the government doesn't have to rely on the old guard to achieve space dominance." Rick frowned slightly. "That could make things even messier. The DoD is already getting defensive. You're talking about a complete restructuring of the way they operate." Musk smiled. "Exactly. They'll resist. But it'll force them to confront their own limitations. And when they do, they'll see that SpaceX is the solution. We'll make sure they can't ignore the fact that the future of space exploration lies with us." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. SpaceX's legal team prepared the groundwork for a massive lobbying effort that would shake Washington to its core. Musk knew that the key to success would lie in exposing the inefficiencies and outdated thinking within the military-industrial complex. The plan was simple, but bold: expose the government's reliance on a few select defense contractors, and show how that dependence was holding the country, and the world, back from realizing the full potential of space exploration. SpaceX wasn't just about launching rockets, it was about creating a space economy that could benefit everyone. And that was a message that resonated deeply with the American public. Meanwhile, Musk kept his focus on other key fronts. His space technology continued to advance at a rapid pace, and SpaceX made significant strides with the Starship program, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. The company's accomplishments were becoming harder and harder for the critics to ignore, and the media coverage of SpaceX's successes intensified. In Washington, the political pressure began to mount. As SpaceX's public campaign gained traction, more and more politicians, especially those who represented constituencies with strong aerospace industries, began to take notice. They couldn't ignore the writing on the wall. The future of space exploration wasn't just going to be about the old guard, it was about a new era of innovation. And then, the inevitable happened. The Department of Defense made a move that would escalate the situation even further. They announced that they would be awarding a series of contracts to a consortium of defense contractors, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and a few other heavyweights, claiming that they had the infrastructure and capabilities to provide the national security space launches that the country needed. Musk wasn't surprised. This was the move that had been brewing in the background for months. The military-industrial complex had struck back. But SpaceX had already anticipated this. Musk wasn't one to sit idly by and accept defeat, especially not now, when the stakes were so high. "We'll make sure they feel this," Musk said to his team when the news broke. "This is exactly why we've been pushing. They want to maintain the status quo, but we're going to make sure everyone sees that they're choosing the old way, while we're fighting for the future." The battle had truly begun. SpaceX's legal and public relations teams quickly sprang into action, launching a counterattack that would shake the foundations of Washington's relationship with the military-industrial complex. They would not back down. The fight for the future of space exploration was on, and Elon Musk was leading the charge. The stakes were clear. If SpaceX could break through the power structures that had held space exploration in a stranglehold for so long, they could pave the way for a new era of innovation, economic growth, and scientific discovery. But first, they would have to win the battle of influence. And as Musk had always known, that battle was never just about rockets and satellites, it was about changing the course of history. The days leading up to the congressional hearings felt like the calm before a storm. SpaceX's campaign to expose the military-industrial complex's dominance over space contracts had gained significant momentum, but now the real test was about to unfold. Elon Musk knew that the next few weeks could determine whether SpaceX would be allowed to continue its trailblazing journey into space, or whether they would be crushed under the weight of the entrenched political and corporate interests fighting to preserve the status quo. Musk sat in his office late one evening, his fingers tapping rhythmically against the surface of his desk. The walls of the room were lined with images of SpaceX's greatest achievements, successful Falcon Heavy launches, the landing of Starship prototypes, and a growing roster of ambitious projects. But tonight, the images felt distant, almost irrelevant. This wasn't about rockets anymore. This was about power. Control. The future of humanity's place in space. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Gwynne Shotwell entered, holding a stack of documents. Her face was taut with the kind of concern that only grew in the face of looming legal battles. "Elon, it's getting more intense," she said, dropping the stack onto the table. "The DoD's lobbying arm has been meeting with key legislators, trying to swing them in their favor. Some of them are wavering. They're pushing the narrative that SpaceX's vision is too risky, that our methods of innovation are too unproven, too unpredictable." Musk's brow furrowed. "They can't win this on their own. We've been through too much to back down now." Gwynne nodded, a slight smile crossing her face. "I know. But they're pulling out all the stops. The Pentagon's been playing the long game with Congress. They're making it clear that SpaceX's success could jeopardize their own financial interests. The defense contractors are throwing everything they've got at us." Musk leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepling in thought. He wasn't about to back down. Not now. Not when SpaceX was on the cusp of changing everything. "They can lobby all they want," Musk said, his voice steady. "But the public has already made their choice. The people know that SpaceX is about the future of space. They see our commitment to getting humanity off Earth. The government can't ignore that." Gwynne agreed. "We have the momentum. We just need to stay focused. The hearing's tomorrow, and if we play our cards right, we can expose the flaws in the Pentagon's approach. The media is already on our side. The pressure's on them now." The morning of the congressional hearings arrived with an electric charge in the air. Every corner of Washington seemed to be buzzing with anticipation. The committees, the lawmakers, the lobbyists, they were all gearing up for a showdown that would have far-reaching consequences. The stage was set for a monumental clash of ideals: SpaceX, the innovator on the rise, against the long-standing military-industrial complex that had controlled space exploration for decades. Musk entered the hearing room with the same calm, almost detached demeanor he had used in countless business meetings. But beneath the cool exterior, his mind was racing. This wasn't just about defending SpaceX's right to space contracts, it was about defending the very idea of progress, of pushing humanity to the stars. The room fell silent as the hearings began. Musk sat at the table, flanked by his legal team, while representatives from Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and other defense contractors were seated across from him. The tension in the room was palpable. The committee chair, Senator Richard Malone, an influential figure known for his ties to the defense industry, called the hearing to order. "Today, we will be discussing the future of national security space contracts. We have with us representatives from some of the most prominent players in the field, including SpaceX, which has disrupted the industry in recent years." Malone's tone was measured, but there was an underlying skepticism. He knew Musk's reputation for shaking things up, and he wasn't sure how he felt about the rise of SpaceX. "Mr. Musk," Senator Malone began, "you've been at the forefront of the space revolution, but your company's business model has raised serious concerns. Some of my colleagues believe that SpaceX's rapid rise could destabilize the very contracts that secure our national defense. What do you say to those concerns?" Musk's eyes locked onto Malone, his voice steady but passionate. "Senator Malone, I respect the importance of national security. But SpaceX is not trying to disrupt security. We're here to offer a better way, a more efficient way. The old guard system is bloated, outdated, and inefficient. It's costing taxpayers billions of dollars, and it's not even moving the needle on our goal to make humanity a multiplanetary species. He paused, letting his words settle in the room. The defense contractors across from him shifted in their seats, their discomfort palpable. Musk continued, SpaceX has demonstrated, time and again, that we can do more with less. We've built reusable rockets that reduce the cost of space travel by a factor of 10. We've launched payloads with precision, at a fraction of the cost. And we've done all this while advancing the cause of space exploration. If we want to secure our future in space, we can't afford to stay stuck in the past. The room went quiet, the gravity of his words hanging in the air. Musk had made his case. He wasn't just defending SpaceX's role in the industry, he was advocating for a vision of the future that was about more than just defense contracts. It was about humanity's place in the stars. But Senator Malone wasn't about to let Musk's bold statements go unchallenged. You've made some impressive strides, Mr. Musk, but there are concerns that your company is too focused on commercial ventures. We have to ask, can we trust SpaceX with the responsibility of safeguarding our national security interests, or are you too wrapped up in profit-making to prioritize security? Musk's eyes glinted. National security is important, Senator. But let's not pretend that the current system is flawless. The defense contractors have failed to innovate for decades. We've shown that we can do things faster, cheaper, and more efficiently. We're not in this to make money, we're in this because we believe in the future. We believe in space. He leaned forward slightly, his voice growing more intense. If we let the old system continue, we'll be left behind. We can't afford to be held back by outdated thinking. We need to embrace the future, now. The room was silent for a moment. There was a tension in the air, as though everyone was waiting for something, anything, that could shift the outcome of this high-stakes battle. Finally, Senator Malone spoke again, his voice low. You've made your case, Mr. Musk. But it's not up to me to decide the future of national defense contracts. We'll take your words into account, but the process must continue. The hearings continued, but Musk had already delivered his message. The committee members were rattled, and the news coverage of the hearings would be explosive. His message was clear, SpaceX wasn't just about building rockets, it was about reshaping the future of space, for everyone. As Musk left the hearing room, he knew the battle was far from over. The military-industrial complex would fight tooth and nail to preserve their control. But in that moment, he also knew one thing for sure, SpaceX had just crossed a major threshold. The tide had begun to turn. And now, it was time to finish what they had started. The aftermath of the congressional hearings sent shockwaves throughout Washington, but it also reverberated far beyond the hallowed halls of power. SpaceX had just fought a battle for the future, and the world was watching. Elon Musk knew that the hearing had shifted the narrative, but the real test would come in the form of the media coverage that would follow. The day after the hearing, headlines blazed across news outlets, Musk challenges Pentagon's grip on space contracts, SpaceX faces off against defense giants in historic congressional hearing, Elon Musk calls for space revolution in Washington testimony. The articles, op-eds, and news segments were dominated by Musk's impassioned plea for change in the way space exploration was handled by the U.S. government. The world was divided, some saw Musk's stance as a visionary act, while others believed it was reckless, even dangerous. But one thing was clear, Musk's words had struck a chord. The battle had entered a new phase, and SpaceX was no longer just a disruptor, it was a movement. As the days passed, Musk found himself at the center of an increasingly intense media storm. His inbox was flooded with interview requests, and his phone buzzed constantly with calls from reporters eager to get his thoughts on everything from national security to the future of space. Musk didn't mind. He was used to the spotlight, but this felt different. It was no longer just about SpaceX's next launch or groundbreaking achievement, it was about the future of the entire industry. In the days following the hearings, Musk made several high-profile appearances. His first was on a popular news network where he was interviewed by a seasoned political reporter, Maria Thompson. The exchange was intense, with Thompson pressing Musk on his views about the role of the government in space and whether SpaceX's bold approach could put national security at risk. "You've made it clear that you believe the Pentagon's old guard is holding back progress," Thompson said, her voice calm but firm. "But the fact remains that the DoD has always been in charge of space contracts, and for good reason. The U.S. military has the infrastructure and the experience to ensure security in space. Can SpaceX really step into that void without jeopardizing our national interests?" Musk leaned forward slightly, his expression unyielding. "Maria, the old way isn't working. It's costing taxpayers a fortune, and we're not seeing any real progress. The military-industrial complex has been holding this country back from realizing its true potential in space. SpaceX is changing that. We're bringing innovation, efficiency, and a vision for a future where space isn't just for the military, it's for everyone." Thompson raised an eyebrow. "But what about the risks? The stakes are incredibly high when it comes to national security. What makes you think that SpaceX can be trusted with such a responsibility?" Musk's gaze was unwavering. "It's about trust, yes, but it's also about vision. We don't just build rockets, we build the future. SpaceX isn't just a business, it's a movement. We're not focused on profits. We're focused on creating a future where humanity is a multiplanetary species, where we're no longer confined to Earth. That's the kind of vision this country needs, not the status quo." The interview was just one example of the growing media frenzy. Every major news network wanted to hear Musk's take on the fight for space, and social media was ablaze with opinions, both for and against SpaceX's approach. Musk was being lauded as a revolutionary figure, someone who was taking on the establishment and winning the hearts and minds of millions. But for every admirer, there were those who feared that his boldness could lead to unforeseen consequences. As the media storm continued to build, SpaceX's legal team worked tirelessly behind the scenes to prepare for the next phase of the battle. The Department of Defense was not sitting idly by. It had already begun lobbying Congress harder, pulling out all the stops to make sure SpaceX's challenges to the old system were stifled. Musk knew that the public support was on his side, but he also knew that this would be a long fight. The next step was critical. SpaceX had to prove that it wasn't just about fighting for contracts, it was about the future of space itself. One afternoon, Musk sat in his office with Gwynne Shotwell and Rick Taylor, discussing their next move. The pressure was mounting, but Musk was determined not to let up. "We've got the people behind us," Musk said, his voice filled with quiet resolve. "We've got the momentum. We just need to keep pushing. The DoD is trying to fight us on the contracts, but they're forgetting one important thing: we're not just competing for a piece of the pie. We're building something new. They can't stop that." Rick Taylor looked thoughtful. "They're pushing back hard, Elon. We've got to be prepared for the legal battle ahead. If we win, it'll be a huge victory, but if we lose—" "I'm not losing," Musk cut him off. "This isn't about one lawsuit or one contract. This is about the future. The world is watching. We have to win, not just for SpaceX, but for everyone who believes in what we're doing." Gwynne leaned forward, a determined look on her face. "You're right. The media's on our side, and the public support is growing. But we need to continue exposing the flaws in the current system. We can't just win a battle, we need to win the war. The more we highlight the inefficiencies of the defense contractors, the more pressure we'll put on Congress to support us." Musk nodded, his mind racing with ideas. "Exactly. We'll keep pushing the narrative. We've shown we can build a better rocket. Now we need to show we can build a better future. The government can't afford to ignore that." As the meeting wrapped up, Musk stood up, his expression intense. "We're not backing down. We're fighting for something bigger than ourselves." The weeks that followed were a blur of court filings, media appearances, and intense lobbying. The political battle for the future of space was heating up, and the stakes had never been higher. But Musk was determined to see it through. He knew that this was the defining moment for SpaceX, and for humanity's future in space. And as the media storm raged on, one thing became clear: SpaceX was no longer just a company. It was a symbol of hope, of progress, and of the relentless pursuit of a better future. The battle was reaching its climax. After weeks of back and forth, with lawmakers, media, and public opinion all in a frenzy, SpaceX was on the brink of securing its place in history. Elon Musk knew that the next few days could determine whether the dream of expanding humanity's reach into space would continue or falter in the face of political opposition and corporate resistance. It was a chilly morning in Washington, D.C. Musk sat in his hotel suite, reviewing the latest updates on the upcoming congressional vote. Gwynne Shotwell, his trusted partner, walked in, a heavy folder in hand, her face grim. "Elon, we've just received word that the military-industrial complex has launched a new offensive. They're mobilizing to make one last push before the vote. They're pulling out all the stops: more lobbying, more donations to key legislators, more public attacks against SpaceX. They've even enlisted a few pundits to publicly question our commitment to national security." Musk nodded, unfazed by the news. "They're scared, Gwynne. They know that if they lose this battle, it's not just about contracts. It's about control. SpaceX is a threat to their monopoly on space." He leaned back in his chair, hands behind his head, looking out of the window at the city below. "But they've underestimated one thing. This isn't just about space contracts anymore. It's about the future. We've already won the hearts and minds of the public. They're starting to realize that the old way isn't good enough." Gwynne's expression softened. "You're right. But we can't take this victory for granted. The opposition is getting desperate. They're going to try everything they can to sway the vote. We need to be ready." Musk stood up, his posture exuding confidence. "We've been ready for this moment since day one. Let them try. We've got the momentum, and we've got the truth on our side." The day of the vote arrived. Washington, D.C. was buzzing with activity, and the stakes were higher than ever. Inside the Capitol, the atmosphere was tense. Legislators milled around in the halls, discussing the impending vote, while journalists and photographers gathered, waiting for the moment when the battle for the future of space would unfold before them. In the committee room, the debate was as heated as expected. Senator Malone, still a staunch ally of the defense contractors, stood before the microphone. "We cannot afford to let an untested, profit-driven company control the future of our national security," he argued, his voice authoritative. "The military-industrial complex has provided our nation with the security we need for decades. SpaceX may have innovative technology, but can they really be trusted with the responsibility of ensuring the safety of our country?" Across from him, Musk sat calmly, hands folded in front of him. He had expected this kind of rhetoric. He'd heard it all before. But today, he wasn't here to argue over semantics or defend his company. Today, he was here to challenge the entire premise. Musk rose to speak, his voice steady, unwavering. "Senator Malone, I respect the men and women of our armed forces, and I respect the importance of national security. But what we're talking about here is something much bigger than just security. This is about ensuring that the United States doesn't fall behind in the space race. It's about securing our future as a multiplanetary species. Space is the next frontier, and we cannot allow outdated practices and entrenched interests to hold us back." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the room, making eye contact with key legislators. "If we continue to support the status quo, we're signing our own demise. SpaceX isn't just about rockets, it's about innovation, it's about vision, and it's about our children's future. This is the moment we decide whether we are going to lead the world in space exploration or sit on the sidelines while others take the reins." Musk's words landed with a powerful impact. The room was silent for a moment as legislators processed his statement. Gwynne Shotwell, sitting in the back of the room, exchanged a knowing look with Rick Taylor. They both knew that Musk had delivered his strongest argument yet. But the opposition was not going down without a fight. The defense contractors' lobbyists had already begun pushing their counter-narrative through various channels, painting SpaceX as a rogue actor, too risky for the responsibility of space exploration. It was a classic smear campaign. But Musk wasn't backing down. Hours passed, and the vote was finally called. The tension in the room was palpable, as senators filed in one by one to cast their votes. Musk sat at the front of the room, his fingers tapping lightly on the table. The outcome was uncertain, there were still undecided votes. Could they win enough support to overcome the opposition? The room fell silent as the final votes were counted. The clerk began reading the results, and Musk's heart pounded in his chest. The vote is 51 to 49, the clerk announced. The motion to approve SpaceX's proposal has passed. A wave of relief washed over Musk. It was a hard-fought victory, but it was one he had earned. The future of space exploration was now in his hands. The room erupted in applause, with some members of Congress standing to offer congratulations, while others, clearly disappointed, remained seated. Musk stood and shook hands with key allies, including senators who had supported SpaceX's vision from the beginning. But he knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Gwynne Shotwell walked up to him, a wide smile on her face. "We did it, Elon. We won." Musk smiled, but his expression remained focused. "This is just one battle, Gwynne. The real work starts now. We've got a long road ahead of us, but we've just made history." That evening, as the sun set over Washington, Musk found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this moment. It had been a roller coaster ride, full of setbacks, challenges, and moments of doubt. But through it all, SpaceX had emerged victorious. He stepped outside the Capitol, taking in the view of the city. The battle wasn't over, but the victory was a crucial step toward realizing his vision for humanity's future in space. The path was clear, and SpaceX had just carved a new trail for the rest of the world to follow. SpaceX wasn't just a company anymore, it was a movement. And Elon Musk had just turned the tide. The days following the historic victory in Congress felt surreal for Elon Musk. He had just won the battle of his life, but he knew that this was merely the beginning of an even greater challenge. The victory had granted SpaceX the go-ahead to revolutionize space exploration and break the dominance of the old guard that had long controlled space contracts. Now, the real work would begin. Musk stood at the front of SpaceX's headquarters in Hawthorne, California, looking out over the sprawling campus. The building had been a symbol of defiance and progress since its inception, and now it stood as a testament to his unwavering belief that humanity's future lay in the stars. He could hear the faint hum of engineers working in the distance, and the bustling activity of the team below him, all eager to push the boundaries of what was possible. It was a feeling he cherished, but today, he felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Everything we've worked for is finally coming to fruition, Elon." Gwynne Shotwell's voice broke his thoughts as she walked up beside him, her hands clasped behind her back. Musk nodded but didn't look at her. His gaze remained fixed on the horizon, where the sun was beginning to dip low. "It's surreal, but we can't stop here. We've opened a door, but there's so much more to do. The space race isn't just about getting to Mars. It's about creating a future where space is accessible to all, not just a select few." Agreed. "But we've taken the first step. The political battle was intense, but now we have the green light to push forward," Gwynne responded. "The question is, how do we stay ahead of everyone else?" Musk's lips curled into a half-smile. "By doing what we've always done, thinking bigger than anyone else, and working harder than anyone else." As the weeks passed, SpaceX became the focal point of the space industry. The company's triumph in Washington had sparked a wave of optimism, drawing attention from all corners of the world. Investors poured money into SpaceX, seeing an opportunity not just in commercial space travel, but in the broader vision Musk had outlined, a future where humanity lived on multiple planets. However, with success came challenges. The defense contractors, though defeated in Congress, didn't go quietly into the night. Behind closed doors, they lobbied fiercely to undo the new law, seeking to reassert their dominance over the space industry. They had the financial power, the political connections, and the infrastructure, but they were up against an innovator who had shown that even the most entrenched systems could be disrupted. Musk knew that SpaceX's work wasn't finished, it had only just begun. There would be new battles to fight, political, financial, and technological. Yet, Musk remained resolute. He was determined to continue pushing the boundaries of what was possible. SpaceX's next mission, which had been years in the making, was to launch the first crewed mission to Mars. This mission would be the ultimate test of Musk's vision and SpaceX's capabilities. In the months that followed, Musk found himself working around the clock. Long hours spent in meetings, reviewing rocket designs, and strategizing for SpaceX's next big leap. But the weight of the responsibility never left him. He understood that the eyes of the world were on him and that the stakes had never been higher. "Here we are," Musk said to Gwynne, as they stood in front of the Falcon Super Heavy rocket, the centerpiece of SpaceX's Mars program. "The Falcon Super Heavy will get us to Mars. We've got the technology. Now we need to prove it." Gwynne glanced at the towering rocket. "It's incredible, Elon. But the pressure is immense. If we succeed, it will be a triumph for all humanity. If we fail..." Musk nodded, acknowledging the gravity of the situation. "We won't fail. Not after everything we've been through. SpaceX is ready for this." The day of the Falcon Super Heavy launch arrived. It was a milestone not just for SpaceX, but for the world. People across the globe watched with bated breath as the rocket stood poised for liftoff. Musk stood with his team, his eyes fixed on the launch pad. His mind raced with thoughts of the journey ahead. The countdown began, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold its collective breath. Then, the engines ignited, and the Falcon Super Heavy roared to life. The force of the liftoff was overwhelming, and as the rocket ascended into the sky, Musk felt a surge of pride. This was it. SpaceX was about to change the course of history once again. As the rocket soared higher, Musk's thoughts turned to the future. Mars was no longer just a distant dream, it was a reality, one that SpaceX was making possible. And as the spacecraft broke through the atmosphere, heading toward the red planet, Musk knew that his mission was clear. Humanity's destiny was among the stars, and SpaceX was leading the way. Months later, as SpaceX successfully landed the first human crew on Mars, the world celebrated. It was a triumph of technology, vision, and perseverance. And yet, Musk knew that the work wasn't over. The true journey had only just begun. SpaceX had secured its place in history, not just as a company, but as a symbol of humanity's unyielding desire to explore, to innovate, and to reach beyond the stars. Elon Musk had dared to challenge the old guard, to challenge what was thought possible, and in doing so, had created a legacy that would inspire generations to come. The road ahead was long, but the future was brighter than ever. SpaceX had not only won a political battle, it had won the hearts of millions of people around the world who now believed in the possibility of a future among the stars. And for Musk, that was the greatest victory of all. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?